Okay.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I want to encourage you, if you haven't yet, to go ahead and open up your chat if you want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and say hi to everybody. I'll encourage you all to stay on mute for now while we start our service.
Okay.
And that way you can all feel free to sing along with me as we go through the songs of the service. So we're going to start off with a nigun. So you don't need to worry about the words, they'll just come to you. Please feel free to sing along. And of course, we want to welcome each other in our virtual space by singing Hine Matov. How good, how pleasant it is for us all to be here together. Feel free to join me. Hine Matov. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. So I want to officially welcome all of you. I see a few people have come in during the couple of welcoming songs we've had. So Shabbat Shalom, welcome to our service tonight. As you can see, Rabbi Rick isn't with us tonight, so you've got me tonight leading the whole service. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight, and I hope you enjoy the stylings of tonight's service. We're gonna move on now in the service to Lecha Dodi, which is a beautiful tradition of welcoming in Shabbat, like the bride, like the Sabbath bride. A beautiful tradition that we've had since about the 1600s, 17th century in Sfat. So please join me. We're gonna do Lecha Dodi, and this is my original melody. Many of you have heard it before, but if you haven't, you'll catch on pretty easily. Please join me, Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, enei Shabbat lekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el ha-yuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, Hashem ol tiferet v'li tilah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, enei Shabbat lekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, enei Shabbat lekabela. We take this moment to invite you, if you're so inclined, to rise up from your seated position and you turn towards whatever your nearest doorway is. You can turn and greet the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha utzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, enei Shabbat lekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, enei Shabbat lekabela. Well, now that we have officially ushered in the Sabbath bride, and it's time for us now to light candles. And for that honor, I'd like to call upon our presidential family. We've got President Steve Abrams and Kim Selfin. We've got we've spotlight them right there, and family. So if you'll please, would you like to do any of the readings before you light candles?
Sure.
All right. Which one would you like to choose?
The second one.
The second one. Well, are we put that one up on the
beginning.
screen for you? One moment.
In the beginning, there was darkness, and the Spirit of God hovered over the darkness. Then God created light, and the work of creation was begun. As we kindle the Sabbath lights, remember the majesty of creation, and rejoice in our ability to witness it again.
hope I don't set the dog on fire. No, I can do it. I'm a big girl.
Just make sure it's all the way lit. All right, there we go. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you for joining us to light candles. And as Rabbi would always say, looking at this beautiful family, we're reminded of this opportunity to share in the family blessing. So if you'll join me, we're on page 9, and we'll put the words up on the screen for you. Please join me, family blessing. Thank you for joining me with the family blessing. We're going to move now in our service to the Shema, followed by the Ve'ahavta. The Shema, of course, being the watchword of our faith as we're encouraged to listen. And I think it's a beautiful sentiment, actually, that it's right there at the center for us to be listening. And it's listening to ourselves, listening to God, listening to each other. This prayer kind of represents a confluence of the individual and the collective and God all together. So we'll put the words on the screen for you. Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. And if you'll please join me, we have the Ve'ahavta on page 15. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Very poignant how we have a certain prayer that is frequently a companion to the Ve'ahavta, because you saw right there, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher Hotzeti Etchem, right? Who brought you out of Eretz Mitzrayim, so out of the land of Egypt, which is not only relevant to the Exodus story, which we actually just finished the book of Exodus in the Torah, but also relevant to upcoming Passover, where we'll be sharing the stories again. And we really do share the stories every day, right? We share the stories of our freedom from slavery in Egypt every day with this particular prayer, with Micha Mocha, because only as free people do we have the full ability to pray and to live our lives following the mitzvot. A slave doesn't have control over their lives in those elements. So we are so thankful. We have gratitude. We express this with Micha Mocha, which you'll find on page 16, and we'll put the words on the screen for you. So what I'm about to talk with you all about now is actually very, very relevant to Micha Mocha and what I just shared with you all. Like I mentioned earlier, we have just come to the end of the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, and this week's parasha is the very first chapter of Vayikra, of the book of Leviticus. So there are a few things that definitely come up with the concept of Vayikra. Vayikra literally means "and he called out." There's a very interesting naming convention that we have, where typically the first word or the first meaningful word that's a unique phrase in that particular portion is actually the way that the portion's named. And the book of Leviticus is called Vayikra, and he called out. And particularly the things that are called out with this book are a whole lot of laws. I don't know how familiar any of you are with just how many laws there are in the entirety of the Tanakh, but if you look at the way that the books are all divided, we have the 5 books of the Torah, and the books of Genesis and the book of Exodus. Those two are very much filled with story, right? We have lots of stories that are being told, lots of lessons to be learned in the ways that the stories are related. When we kind of come to the book of Vayikra, we start to see a bit of a shift, because we start to see a lot more details rather than stories. We see details of laws and the way that these laws are enacted and carried out among our people. So it's very interesting to see that we have this shift. Now, there's particularly a set of laws that comes up with Vayikra, with this week's portion. And I want you all to, if you haven't yet, to open up your chat, because I definitely want to hear from you all and see, does anybody know happen to know with Vayikra, with that first chapter of the book of Leviticus, specifically what I'm talking about. And I'll give you a hint. My hint is it has to do with laws concerning something we don't do anymore. And this is something that they used to do back in those times when we have, whereas we have prayer. Oh, Maggie's got it. Animal sacrifice, right? So animal sacrifice is very common in the Tanakh. Very common in those times, and not just among the Israelites, but among many of the different peoples and the different types of religions that were followed during those times. Now, we know that we don't do animal sacrifices anymore, largely because we don't have the Holy Temple in place anymore. Keep in mind, though, they didn't actually have the Holy Temple at this time either, but they did have laws concerning the animal sacrifices because they had the Mishkan, they had the wandering sanctuary that they had going through the desert, right? They had the tabernacle, and they had the Kohanim, they had the priests, Aaron and his sons, and they had the laws concerning the different types of sacrifices that were offered. Now, to us today, it might seem kind of strange to have all these laws concerning something we just don't do anymore. In fact, we haven't had animal sacrifice for close to 2,000 years, right? The Second Holy Temple was destroyed in 70 CE, so we're just about 50 years shy of 2,000 years since we've actually had animal sacrifices. So what do we possibly have to learn from that? Some of you may know that our replacement for animal sacrifice is prayer. Right? Instead of sacrificing animals, we have avodah shebelev. We have a service of the heart, and that's where we get the practices concerning 3 times a day daily prayer. They used to offer 3 times a day. They would offer animal sacrifices, right? And the Amidah is also like the centerpiece of that. That's really the piece of our liturgy that forms that replacement, right? But I want us to take a moment to really think about what animal sacrifice meant back then. Not just the logistics of killing an animal, because we don't like to think about that. But I want you to think about what it means during those times, and think about the scarcity of food and resources that they had living in the desert thousands of years ago. Think about what it meant to have an animal, and maybe they didn't only had one, or maybe only a couple, right? All that went into caring for that animal, providing it with everything it needed in order for it to be healthy. And that animal could provide milk for you, could provide meat for you and your family. There's lots of things that the animal could provide. But instead of doing all of that, giving that animal up just for God, right? Think about what that means, what that meant for our ancestors to do something like that. Now, I think a lot of us do understand the concept of sacrifice very well, because if you look at the past year, I'm sure many of us have sacrificed a lot in order to keep everybody safe. And I think we all can appreciate how important that is. What I want to do now is just to take a moment for you all to think about. It doesn't have to be something in the past year, but I want you to think about a time when you sacrificed something that was maybe important to you for the sake of someone else, something that was maybe more important to someone else. And I want you to really close your eyes maybe and just reflect for about a minute here and think about a time when you did that. And if you feel comfortable to do so, I would love to see you share in the chat how that made you feel. You don't have to share the actual action of what you sacrificed unless you want to, but I would love to see how it made you feel to give something up, something that mattered to you up for someone else, and how that made you feel. We'll give you a couple seconds here to write that out. Okay, we've got a couple of responses coming in. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about sacrificing your time. If you think about it, when we do pray, we are sacrificing our time to God, but we sacrifice our time willingly to the people that we love as well. And Heather mentioned a spirit of generosity. Yes, that's a beautiful sentiment, the sacrifice. Anybody else feel like putting in the chat how it made you feel to sacrifice for somebody else? A mixture of happiness and something like sadness. Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. Okay, feeling more fulfilled in spite of the exhaustion. Sure, absolutely. Okay, reinforcing a reason for our existence, making you feel grateful for what you have. Absolutely. Certainly, if you think about animal sacrifice, and that relates to that too, right? Because not everyone even had the animal to give up. Of course, so grateful that you even have the ability to do something like that. Give you just a few more seconds if anyone else wants to write in the chat how it made you feel when you've sacrificed for something for someone else. Maggie mentions, this is interesting, she mentions the fact that there were alternatives for people who maybe couldn't afford to bring the full animal sacrifice, that they could use a bird. Sometimes they could use a grain offering instead. So yes, there should absolutely be no reason, just because if you don't have a lot, that doesn't mean that you can't still sacrifice something. And in a second, in case anybody else wants to post, I'm just going to take a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to kind of explain a little bit about what's behind that and why we have that in place. All right, so I don't know if does anybody happen to know the Hebrew word for sacrifice? If you do, you can put it in the chat. Korban. Okay, we got a couple takers. Yes, korban, right? A korban is a sacrifice. Now, yes, exactly, Maggie's got it right. Drawing near. So the shoresh, the root letters for the word korban, for sacrifice, are kuf resh vet, which literally means the karev, to draw close to something. So a sacrifice was an opportunity to draw closer to God, right? Through that act of giving something up. And I think a lot of the sentiments that many of you expressed in the chat really reflect that, because even though we don't like to give up something that's important to us, we recognize that, first of all, that we're very fortunate to have something we can even give up in the first place. But second of all, that we have people in our lives that we care for, that we have the opportunity to do something for them, even if it means letting go of something that's valuable to us, right? That kind of gratitude, that mixture of happiness and sadness, that spirit of generosity that Heather mentioned, right? All of those things are kind of wrapped up in that. I think the word korban, for sacrifice, even though we don't do animal sacrifices anymore, I think it's a very appropriate word to express the feeling of what sacrifice and what that feels like, because it is an opportunity to draw closer. And I think it's important for us to, even though we don't have that we don't use those laws anymore, but we still have them in place because they still have something to teach us. They can teach us about the value of sacrifice, of giving things up, the value of, like Maggie mentioned, of having alternatives, that people shouldn't feel any less than just because they don't have those resources, that they should still feel capable of being able to sacrifice, of being able to draw closer. And also the feeling of having a sense of community, of being together. And this is something that everybody drew closer to God, but also maybe to each other as a community, and having something like this in place. So luckily for us, I don't think too many of us would be very keen on doing animal sacrifices today, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's important for us to recognize the value of that piece of our history. And this is not just our history, but this is the history of humanity. It's something that that people did during those times. And just to understand where that's coming from and how that can still be with us today, albeit in a different form. So we sacrifice our time, we sacrifice our money, we sacrifice. There's lots of things that we have, resources that we have that are not animals, that we do still sacrifice all the time. And this is, like I said earlier, I think especially appropriate when we think about the past year and all of the things that are so important to us that we've put on hold, because what's more important to us is everybody's health and well-being and continued ability to live. And pikuach nefesh, the value of a human life, is something beyond any mitzvah, any commandment that we have. That's the most number one high value that we have, is the value of human life. So I just wanted us to reflect on that. And speaking of the sacrifice and the prayer service, I want to take a moment now to come to Hashkivenu, which is our nighttime prayer for safety and for peace, right? There were lots of things that kind of came attached with sacrifice. We sacrifice to God so that we can draw closer, and hopefully God will provide for us as well. So we're going to put the words up on the screen for you now, Hashkivenu. And if you'll join me, we'll have this evening prayer for peace and for shelter. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, vehamidenu malkeinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, vehamidenu malkeinu lechaim. Ushmor tzidkeinu, uvoleinu, lechaim ushalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, vehamidenu malkeinu lechaim. 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 This is our opportunity now in the service to take a moment to reflect, to meditate on all that we've shared so far in the service. And Jason's going to put up a beautiful picture for us to look at and reflect on. If you'll take a moment with me for some silent meditation. Hopefully by now you've had enough time to go through your silent reflections and meditations. And I want to take a moment to leave space. And if anyone feels like you're not ready to move away from silent meditation yet, feel free to keep doing that. We're going to, meanwhile, move on to Yihu Ratzon. May the words of meditation reflection that we've just spoken in our hearts be acceptable before Adonai our God. And the words to this are found on page 22 of your Siddur, and we have them right in front of you. Please join me. Friends, we've now reached the moment in our service where we like to pray for healing to those who need it. So we're going to turn now to Misha Berach, and we're going to also put on the screen, of course, our list of names for people in the community in between. So if you also have any names that you know may not be on our list, you can feel free to start putting them in the chat now. And please join me with Misha Berach. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. So we'll give you a moment now if you want to continue putting names in the chat. And we're going to show some names here on the screen of people that we wish healing to. Members of our community, family members of those in our community. And of course, we wish them a very speedy and full healing. All of the friends and co-workers that we have on this list, as well as everybody in the chat that you guys are continuing to mention. We pray for recovery for all these friends, co-workers, members, family members, and everyone in the chat. Please join me. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We wish a refuah shlema to everyone our prayers just went out to. May they have a full, speedy recovery of healing. Amen. So our service, of course, would not be complete without taking this opportunity to think of those who are no longer with us. And of course, this presents us the opportunity to pray the Kaddish Prayer. So if you'll bear with me, we're going to have on the screen for a moment here, we're going to go through the names on our Kaddish list and our Yahrzeit list. And then after we've gone through the list, if there's anyone who isn't mentioned, who you're thinking of for this Kaddish prayer, I want to encourage you to also put them in the chat. So our Kaddish prayer goes out to Fred Michaels, Linda Luna, to J. Lee Crane, to Dr. C. Harold Cohn, Barbara Abraham, Ernestine Erkin, Earl Sanders, Larry Moskowitz, Rebecca Kaufman, Howard Schwartz, Richard Abraham, David Bernstein, Stephen Strauss, Donald Allen Pocock, Suzanne Smith, Cecilia Carpenter. And we want to recognize the Yahrzeits of Louis Friedenberg, Arnold Gold, Doris Lishner-Haas, Winnie Mertens, Lawrence Raphael, Lucille Block, Bernard Jabin, Evelyn Powler, Riva Brodsky, Hiram Eisenstein, Harold Harris, Joseph Leichter, Gus McCallis, Shirley Rosen, Francis Stoller, Louis Sheldon, Nathan Schwartz, and Paul Winhausen, and of course, all those we have lost to COVID-19 in this past year. We'll take a moment if anyone else would like to add some names in the chat. Our heart goes out to them with this Kaddish prayer. And as we do observe the Kaddish prayer, I want to encourage you all, if you feel so inclined, to please rise in solidarity as we say our Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv, ve'imru Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru Amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. May the one on high who makes peace make peace over all us and over all of Israel and over all of the world, and bring comfort to those in mourning. And we say, Amen. So those words that we just had at the end with Oseh Shalom, we want to bring them back and take a moment to sing them together, our prayer for peace. Please join me, Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom b'Rama, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen. So we've come to that time in our service where I'd like to invite Dan Heller to come up on the screen, spotlighting. Please unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear your announcements for this upcoming week at TSG. Take it away, Dan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cantor. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We'd like to thank tonight's service participants, the Salfan and Abrams family for the candlelighting, well done, and Cantor Alyssa for leading the Ve'ahavta prayer, as well as a beautiful, beautiful solo service. Among the many things coming up at Temple Sinai, we have 3 very important events this Sunday. First, Sisterhood's Hooked on Cookbooks, happening via Zoom at 10:30 a.m. with a special focus on Pesach recipes. Yum. Secondly, our Passover drive-through from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., where all temple members are welcome to come and pick up their complimentary holiday bags, stuffed with all sorts of delicious Passover goodies. I think there's even a Sisterhood cookbook in there or something, but believe me, I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. Yeah, that's right. I won't give it away. And then finally on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Via Zoom, it's Nosh and Learn with Cantor Alyssa, which will include songs, Passover teachings, and of course, a little bit of eating. You'll find the details about all of this and more in Sunday's TSG email blast. Shabbat Shalom from Jason. It's coming from Jason. I would like to also say that the Oneg this evening is being sponsored by my wonderful wife, Debbie, and me in honor of Cantor Alyssa, and how much we as a congregation as a whole are looking forward to be able to participate in services personally with her and meet her in the not too distant future. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Amen, and thank you so much. I certainly am looking forward to the very same thing. All right, if everyone would take an opportunity here to grab your Kaddish cup. I'm going to share with you the long Kiddush because it's not actually that much longer, and I think we've got the time. So please join me on the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat l'chaim. So with that, we come to our closing song. And the closing song I want to share with you all, maybe some of you have heard. I think many of you might be familiar with the tradition of what we do when we come to the end of a book in the Torah and we go and we get ready to start a new one. And that tradition is to say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. So I want to share with you all a beautiful song by Julie Silver that expresses that sense of strength and where that comes from. So if you know it, sing along, and if not, I think you'll catch on to the chorus, and feel free to join me. Candles burn in the window on this Friday night. Listen close and look within. Be part of our light. We're singing together joyfully, passing love around. All this keeps our family. Week by week, we're going strong. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. As we're teaching our children, they'll be teaching us too. Book by book from the Torah, each one reads like new. The tree of life is growing. It started from a seed. We give it love and caring. It gives us the strength we need. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. May we all go from strength to strength in the week ahead. Shabbat shalom, everybody. We'll give you the opportunity to unmute and wish each other a Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Everyone.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.